So hello everyone and welcome to this edition of Intelex webinar series. So our webinar today is entitled Traceability in Food Manufacturing from Farm to Fork. And facilitating our webinar today will be Jeremy Mawson. Jeremy is a food safety solutions specialist here at Intelex, and he's worked with many organizations to address their food safety management and compliance needs. So today, Jeremy will be speaking about supply chain traceability in food manufacturing, which is something that has become a core pillar of preventive food safety. So he's going to be giving us some insight into what exactly traceability means, how to effectively achieve it within your supply chain, and maintain compliance with food safety standards and legislation. So on that note, I'm going to hand it over to Jeremy and we can get started.
Perfect. Thanks, JP. Just a quick agenda for today's presentation. I guess, to reiterate what JP was saying, first of all, I am on the food and beverage team here at Intelex, so my job really is to work with food and beverage companies to help build out solutions for everything environment, health, and safety and quality. Really for today, obviously the focus is going to be on the quality and food safety side of things, really spending a lot of time going through traceability, what it means, and then ultimately what the impact is for your organization. Just to go through a quick overview, I'll start by doing a fairly high-level definition of traceability from the FDA, discuss a few emerging global legislation such as the Food Safety Modernization Act, really look at what they're entailing and what that impact is on traceability in the food space, and then really look at why traceability is important, both from a compliance standpoint, for your customers, for the FDA, for regulatory bodies, but also to that end-level consumer, making sure that the food that we're presenting within the supply chain is going to be of the best quality and has the limited risk of having any contaminants. So once that's finished up, get into a bit of a discussion of traceability within the supply chain itself, looking at how an organization can manage traceability within their own footprint, within their own company, but then also ensuring traceability as a member of the supply chain as a whole, from farm to fork. And really looking at the role of management information systems, the role that they're going to specifically play in providing traceability and making sure that companies can be in compliance there. So once that's finished, we'll get to a quick discussion of Intelex, the work that we do within the industry and some of the applications we provide, and really how we would fit into the whole picture here. But without further ado, let's jump into things. Again, first things first, we'll start with a fairly high-level definition of traceability provided to us by the FDA. Traceability means the ability to track any food, feed, food-producing animal, or substance that will be used for consumption throughout all stages of production, processing, and distribution. So that's the very high-level look at traceability and what that specifically means. But the bottom line here is, as we're talking about traceability, what we're really referring to is the ability of a company to track all of the input goods, all of the input materials that are involved in the food process from primary production down through processing and packaging, through our distribution network, to our retailers, and ultimately to the consumer. Some companies in this space will have all this vertically integrated into their own operations where they own the primary production and they have all the network right down to the consumer. Some companies would just have a specific piece of this network here, perhaps just distributing product or as that end-level retailer. But the takeaway here is that traceability is providing that visibility into the risks and hazards associated with food right from the farm right down to that end-level consumer to the fork, to use that famous analogy there. But we've talked, I think, mostly at the need for traceability from a compliance standpoint to comply with regulations. But really, why is traceability important? It's important also to take in that end-level consumer into place, or keep them in mind when we're talking about traceability, as ultimately we want to make sure that the product we're producing and ultimately selling has the lowest risk possible of being contaminated or containing any risk. So really, traceability enables regulatory organizations and companies, right, to respond to potential risks that can arise in food and feed. With a more proactive approach, really making sure that we can identify risks, and the various stakeholders that are in place have the ability to better trace and track where the problem occurred, right, being able to isolate that problem and prevent those contaminated products from continuing through the supply chain and ultimately reaching that end-level consumer, right? Again, now coming to this idea of really isolating problems, within traceability, if we're able to have traceability within the organization or within the supply chain, we're able to make targeted withdrawals, right, of the provision of accurate information to the public, and really making sure that we can identify problems and communicate those problems very, very quickly and efficiently to all the people that are involved in the process here, right? And then finally, that the ultimate goal here, again, is to really make sure that we're able to identify any units at the retail level, and take those off the shelf and make sure we can minimize the risk associated with delivering bad product to the consumer. But just in terms of the overall recap of what traceability is and some of the reasons to go for traceability, that was really what I wanted to cover. Now what we'll go through now is talking about traceability within the supply chain itself. looking first at how a company can manage traceability just within their organization, within the scope of their operations, but then as well get into a bit of a broader discussion of how traceability can be achieved throughout the whole supply chain.